At Signature Hardware, you'll find
It's time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day. So join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
And a pleasant good evening to you and yours, and welcome into Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network on this Wednesday, the 19th day of September 2018, along with Professor Tom Hayes, yours truly, Will Pelagic, Professor Brian Leonard. No Phil Kornblut for a second consecutive day. He is finishing up his obligations and duties with Yom Kippur. He'll be back with us tomorrow. More on that in a moment. And, of course, we'll be on location tomorrow as part of the Palmetto Pride Pigskin Preview Tour. Plenty to announce with that. Not just that, but also a couple of new spots to tell you about where we will be over the course of the football season. Again, we'll be previewing what's going on up in Newberry, and again, more on that in just a moment. We have the M&M boys in for their usual Wednesday visit with us. Corey Miller, Will Merritt at the top of hour number 2. We got some renovations to talk about. Williams-Brice Stadium. We're going to hear from the opposition coaches in our coaches' corner after we heard from the South Carolina and Clemson coaches yesterday. We'll hear from Vanderbilt head coach Derek Mason with his game against the Gamecocks coming up Saturday, and Paul Johnson of Georgia Tech as his Yellow Jackets prepare for Clemson. We'd love to hear from you as well. 800-956-7266 is how you get in touch with us. Email talkback@sportstalksc.com, and also make sure to get us on Twitter at SportsTalkSC and on Periscope at SportsTalkSC. That is how you get in touch with us. You can see our pretty faces also at SportsTalkSC.com with our YouTube feed as well. Well, there's only one way really we can start today, and it is the fact that once again, another in-state prospect goes by the wayside. And this is one where I have to say that I'm shocked about this one, although after thinking about last year and how we all felt about Zion Williamson, you can't really say you are shocked that another highly touted prospect, the possible number one prospect in all of college basketball, at least the number one prospect in the state, Josiah James, and this morning at Porter Gown High School in the Low Country, decides that he's going to go to Tennessee, a place where he been recruited by Rick Barnes, basically from the 8th grade onward. Barnes, of course, getting his second in-state prospect in the state of South Carolina. He had DJ Burns, who was a Gamecock target in the class of 2018. He was a guy who reclassified from this 2019 class back to 2018, and Barnes was able to pick him up there. So 2 in a row for the former Clemson coach and now the head man with the Vols. I don't really think, again, this is kind of the second time in a row we've seen this. We had Zion last year with Clemson, and obviously this situation with Josiah. I don't really know if there's much more that Brad Brownell can do, but this is, again, a situation where you thought you had somebody tied up, and the tiger tail, if you will, slips through the fingertips.
Well, the thing I said, I guess it was off the air after we were finished, was I hope this is not a case of like Zion Williamson, and then I get this picture of Lucy with the football snatching it from Charlie Brown just as he goes to kick it, and here's two times in a row that has happened at Clemson. But I thought you were very prophetic this afternoon when you said that Rick Barnes was recruiting South Carolina better than he did when he was at Clemson. And I'm almost thinking that way myself.
Well, I was talking about this with Korn, and again, it's a shame he's not with us tonight because he has a deeper history, at least in this vein. But he was kind of explaining to me that when Rick Barnes was here at Clemson, he was having to go up against Eddie Fogler in these head-to-head recruiting battles for the in-state kids, and he was losing a lot of those battles to Eddie Fogler. And so from that standpoint, he was able to make his hay at Clemson where he needed to, enough to where he can get the boost job, later on in his career to go to Texas, and obviously failing upward, if you will, failing so spectacularly at Texas that apparently Tennessee decided to go to him to basically pick up the mess and pick up the scraps that Conzo Martin left behind. But in my mind, it's not like you lost to a program in Tennessee that is all that much more prestige. The Zion thing's different because you got a guy who went to Duke.
Yes.
The presumption was that you beat out Duke. You finished second in this race, but you finished second to a guy who has now come in and taken two South Carolina top 100 prospects, and you have to wonder, what's going to keep him from taking more?
Space.
Right.
because one of the things I was trying to explain to people, because I know a guy's a top recruit, but then again, some guys like to have their path cleared for them.
Right.
And I was saying before, I said, wait a minute, they're recruiting Josiah James, but it's kind of funny that two or three of the recruits that Frank Martin brought in this recruiting class are in similar size of Josiah James. So I was saying Josiah James may be better than those guys, but some guys don't want to test the waters, and they want what Tennessee's losing who next year and who.
Well, that's the thing about Clemson. It was tailor-made. You were losing Marquise Reed. You were losing Shelton Mitchell. I don't think there's anybody there on the current roster that is going to take the point guard spot. I mean, maybe Clyde Trapp, but I don't think – I think that Josiah James could get a starting spot over Clyde Trapp. I mean, no offense to Clyde, but it just – in that regard, I think this was tailor-made for him to step in. And again, this is the area that I think is most concerning. And I think that's this is the part of it that I think we saw in the DJ Burns case, and we saw this in the Josiah James case. You have Rick Barnes, who was in very early with both players. And, whether or not South Carolina and Clemson got themselves in at that early remains to be seen. James said that Barnes was first in basically on him. He said that in his first person piece he wrote for the Moultrie News in the Low Country there. I almost feel like you have to, I don't want to say cast a wider net inside the state, but I think you really have to go and redo the grassroots. And we've talked about this with Frank Martin. Frank Martin is not the biggest fan of the way grassroots basketball is run these days. He's not a fan of the way the AAU thing is run. I don't really know if Brad Brownell has spoken out on that topic, at least as much as Frank has. But I think you almost have to – anybody who is at the 6th, 7th, 8th grade level who shows promise, you have to start in on them, because these kids are now basically basing a lot of their decisions on who's there first. Early bird gets the worm. And the fact that South Carolina couldn't even get a visit from James, the fact that they let Burns slip through the cracks there with the Gamecocks, the fact that Zion Williamson was right in your backyard and you let him go to Duke, and the fact that Josiah James seemed like you had him sealed up. A lot of people were saying because that Clemson got the last visit, it looked like it was tailor-made to go to Clemson. But instead, the mind thinking there with James was that, he had taken his first official to Tennessee, his second to Clemson, and after taking that official visit to Clemson, he's like, well, you know what? My mind's made up. The visit to Tennessee was much better. I didn't want to waste my time going to Duke, which I don't even know why you would I don't know why you would want to, pass up an opportunity to go to Duke, but maybe you'd want to go to Duke.
Well, I told you why he wasn't going to Duke, because his dad went to Michigan State, and Izzo is 1-11 against Duke.
Right.
You're not going there.
I understand.
Son.
But Chase Hunter is the only again commit so far in the 2019 class. Brad Brownell will have to go back to the proverbial drawing board, and again, I don't obsess much about the losing of the in-state kids as much as everybody else does, because I look at what's come out of the state of South Carolina over the past couple of years, and I've not been very impressed with their results at the next level. Obviously, this is a different class. This is a much more highly touted class with greater potential. But at the end of the day, like I always say, regardless of where you get the players, winning will cure a lot of this conversation. And it has to be consistent winning. It can't be just a blip on the radar, one trip to the next second weekend of the NCAA tournament or one trip to the Final Four. You have to do it consistently, because otherwise you are not going to get noticed.
Well, the key point is it seems to be vogue now for kids in South Carolina not to come to South Carolina or Clemson. Here's one thing I can't understand, though. Zion Williamson goes to Duke. I understand this is a football state. Those other two guys went to football schools. They thought South Carolina and Clemson were football schools. Wait till they get to their respective campuses at Alabama and Tennessee.
Tennessee is only a basketball school when you talk about women's basketball because of their prestige there. 800-956-7266. Our Coach's Corner Opposition interviews. We'll also talk to David Shelton later on in the hour about this more.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
800-956-7266 is how you get in touch with us at SportsTalkSC on Twitter. I know we had Paul in Charleston on the line, but he dropped off. So if you want to get in here, you are free to do so. Again, 800-956-7266. Big point you made going into the break, Professor Tom Hayes, was not just Burns and James going to Tennessee, but Juwan Gary going to Alabama, and that was one where,
boy, that's a big basketball school, isn't it?
Well, that's a unique. Again, these are all very unique situations because that's an NBA. That's a former NBA player there that's recruiting there. Now, whether or not you find him to be a good coach or not, that remains to be seen. And whether or not he can have success there also remains to be seen. Not exactly the kind of basketball prestige, like you said, that their football program is. But I almost wonder, again, do we take these as all unique, one-time only circumstances, or is it part of a larger trend that somehow, and again, South Carolina, at least in this case, is unfairly coupled together with Clemson in this side, but I mean, both schools have had their shots at players over the last two recruiting cycles and have not gotten them. Carolina's gotten one in Trey Hannibal, but outside of that, nothing else really to show for it. Is there something about just the sales pitch? Is there a negative recruitment going on? Is it with the high school coaches? Is the well poisoned? What seems to be the case in your hypothesis here?
I think it's a combination of both.
Or all.
Yeah, because let's face it, some people will look at both Clemson and South Carolina and the basketball as sketchy as the history is, and they see all the warts because they're here.
Right.
They'd rather go to a school where they don't see all the warts, even though they have them.
So you almost feel like they're prisoners of overexposure.
Well, no, it's familiarity brings on contempt. I see all the problems you guys have. I'm going somewhere else. They gave it a big sell. They don't see the other things because they don't live in Tennessee. They don't live in Alabama. They don't see the problems there. But so that jewel shining over there looks better than this one. Because I know every thing that's happening here.
Again, like I said, I don't obsess much about losing the in-state kids. I still contend this wouldn't be a conversation, at least in South Carolina, it wouldn't be a conversation if you didn't just come off a year where you were 17-16 that followed a year where you were in the Final Four. I think for Clemson, the pressure now is on them to not only build off of a year where you had a second weekend appearance in the NCAA tournament. You have three stalwart members of that team back in Mitchell, Reed, and Elijah Thomas, and the supporting cast that was part of that too. You lose DeVoe, but you wonder what is waiting in the wings. Can Hunter Tyson develop into something there? Can you get some of the other pieces that get their way in? Jonathan Baer, guys like that. Can you develop players of that regard to be major contributors at Clemson? I don't know if you can. And, James would have, I don't want to say he would have covered up a lot of ills, but he would have at least solved one problem going into next year.
Yeah.
Maybe two or three with the way that he distributes the basketball.
A taller guy distributing the basketball, a playmaker. Also people.
Plus with the way the way that Brad Brownell loves to coach defense, that length would have been just superb for him.
Especially defensive rebounding. If people don't know how important it is for the guards to contribute at rebounding and covering up passing lanes, that sort of thing. But I've seen this before years ago when a great recruiter by the name of Bobby Crimmins, when he was in his heyday at Georgia Tech, he couldn't get a kid out of Georgia.
Right.
So, like Frank, hey, if my guy's here in state, I love to get in a car and drive and get recruits. But if I have to get on a plane, I'll get on a plane.
I'm just saying, his recruiting footprint took him during the 2018 class all the way to Canada to get AJ Lawson. Now, A.J. Lawson projects to be a pretty good player.
And has some connections.
Has South Carolina roots.
South Carolina.
But at the same time, it's like if you can't, if you're going to Canada to get players and you can't get your own state in order, you have some questions. Again, 800-956-7266. We'll continue to bat this around, but returning to form. It is football season,
yes.
Is it not?
Yes.
We hear a little bit from Derek Mason. He is not a man who is talking about moral victories. This Vanderbilt team lost last week to Notre Dame, and he wants his team and those who follow his team to remember that.
We start SEC play, so obviously, the competition starts to ratchet up week by week. But excited about South Carolina, a really good football team, well coached. And Coach Muschamp is an extremely good coach. Got a lot of respect for him, his program, what he's done. Getting South Carolina, right back where he wants them to be, which is competing in this conference. And they've got a really good football team as I take a look at it. And this game is in our house. South Carolina has won 9 straight, 16 of the last 18. But this will be a street fight. So with that being said, let's get to questions.
Is that you street fight? Is that you wanting to make sure your guys are physical or cautioning them that the opponent plays that style?
Yeah, it's a combination of both. Okay, we know who South Carolina is. South Carolina plays a physical style of ball. That's Coach Muschamp. That's his mentality. That's what it looks like for us. We know that we are a physical team as well. Okay, we just have to be more consistent in what we do. And this is going to be a street fight because it's an SEC game. I don't see SEC games, not being physical. So with that being said, this isn't one of the sanctioned fights that are out there. This is a straight street fight. This is a backyard, no gloves. You throw a punch, I throw a punch. You hit me, I hit you. For 4 quarters, 60 minutes every play.
So how do you win a game like that?
Hey man, you gotta out punch, outlast. You gotta play some defense, play some offense, be opportunistic, play good red zone defense, put the point ball in the end zone, and make sure at the end of the day, you find yourself at the end of 60 minutes, last man standing.
Using that fight analogy, how important is it to kind of land the first punch in this? Because the last few games, the first half has been considerably slower than the second half has been in terms of scoring. Yeah, that's the thing about a street fight. You can't start slow; you'll get knocked out. So, with that being said, we're gonna have to start from the jump. Okay, as soon as the ball's kicked, we got to play good football, special teams, offense, and defense. And believe me, there's nobody that has our attention better than this group of returners because they can take it to the house. They can house call you, in one place. So for me, I've relayed that to our group. They understand what a street fight is. They understand as soon as you say ding, 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 it goes. So, and we'll be ready to play. They will too. So let's go.
Your team seemed to gain a lot of respect nationally after a close loss on the road to a top 10 team. Is there a value in that, people feeling good about your team because of a loss?
If people feel good about that, great. We don't. We play the game to win. They don't. This isn't Little League baseball where everybody gets a trophy. Okay, you step on the stage, man. You play the game, you win or you lose, and believe me, every one of these things counts. So as we've had a chance to recap, close it out, figure out exactly what we did and what we didn't get done. The goal this week is to go 1-0. So. We're gonna play for the prize. We understand what that is, and that's trying to get a victory at the end of the week.
That's Vanderbilt head coach Derek Mason. I asked you before the show, is he on borrowed time? You say no. Why?
The reason I say that is because Vanderbilt is a very unique job. Derek Mason has been defensive coordinator at Stanford, very difficult place to recruit because of academics. He's now at Vanderbilt in an area where it's very difficult to recruit because of academics. The question that anybody comes in there, new athletic director or whatever, who are you going to get to come there?
It's true. Very valid point. Excellent point.
Because as soon as Franklin had that itch, he was gone.
Right.
You knew he was gone.
And he left in a very dirty manner, if I recall correctly. There was a lot of bridges burnt and anchors that were wanting to be thrown his way instead of ones that were put down by the Commodores. But no, the athletic director there is retiring after a very long tenure, and you wonder if the guy who replaces him will be on board with Mason, the guy who has only made 1 bowl in 4 previous seasons. Again, I'm not saying that he's not the right man. It's just I wonder what the appetite is for wanting more there. If they just want to be a,
well, there's
a 500
the problem.
program.
See, this first recruiting is to recruit somebody in the stands
That's
because
true.
the appetite seems not to have never been their advantage because of their crowd.
Their appetite is more for the hot chicken. Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. We are brought to you by Founders Federal Credit Union. Relax at Founders Federal Credit Union. It's all about you when it comes to your financial needs. Founders always, quote, thinks member and takes great pride in offering its members the most innovative products and services. Go to relaxjoinfounders.com to see if you qualify for membership. We tomorrow will be at Newberry, home of the Wolves, getting ready for their SAC opener against Carson Newman. We'll be at Bar Figaro, just catty corner from the Newberry Opera House, from 6 until 8. It is a return visit to Bar Figaro. It's I believe, the only one of our Pigskin Preview Tour spots that it's a repeat visit for us. So we're very much looking forward to being back at Bar Figueroa, and the fans at Newberry. We had a very good turnout there last year. I know Korn was there for that. I was in Nashville for the SEC Basketball Media Days that day, but he reported back on a very, very awesome crowd. Looking forward to seeing head coach Todd Knight and some of the Wolves fans out there for our Pigskin Preview live event, which is brought to you by the folks at Palmetto Pride. Litter trashes everyone. A week from tomorrow, we're going to be at Clemson, Your Pie, in downtown Clemson there on Earl Street, just off the main drag in Clemson. So we're looking forward to that, our first Clemson Pigskin Preview Tour event. We will be previewing the home ACC opener against Syracuse, hoping to get some of the out-of-season coaches as well to stop by, and some other Clemson-related guests as well for that event coming up next week. We just scheduled one for Spartanburg, which of course revolves around the Wofford Terriers. We're going to be at the Beacon next month in Spartanburg.
Lord.
So sports talk aplenty. Yes.
Oh no, I was just thinking about, hey, watch your waistline.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Watch that belt buckle.
I'll get the chili on the side for that one. And we're still working on finalizing locations in Greenville, Charleston, and of course our final week in Columbia. If you want to check out our Pigskin Preview schedule from the folks at Palmetto Pride, you can do so with the banner on our website, SportsTalkSC.com. Coming up, we're going to talk to David Shelton in our next segment about the Josiah James decision. He of the Charleston Post and Courier. Usually we have him on Mondays and Fridays to talk football, but he was at the announcement earlier today, so we'll gather some of his impressions on that, and also about the decision made by the South Carolina High School League to move up or move back things involving the South Carolina State Championships, and also potential news item involving the North-South game. There's talk about possibly moving that game back and even the Shrine Bowl back as well, because they want the access to the players who may or may not be playing in the state championship games, which have been moved back at least 1 week to December 7th and 8th. So those games certainly are being looked at as possible movements, so we'll talk to him about that. Corey Miller, Will Merritt, the M&M boys will join us top of the second hour to go over the Gamecocks game against Vanderbilt and Clemson's against Georgia Tech. The Yellow Jackets of Georgia Tech, head coach Paul Johnson is there, and, interesting kind of looking through this series. Paul Johnson was very much at the forefront of kind of being a Clemson killer on the way in. He won 3 of his first 4 matchups, and 2 of them, including in 1 year, when they won the 2 games where they got them not only during the regular season, but also the rematch in the ACC championship game. But since then, he has not been able to solve Brent Venables. He has won once since Venables has gotten here. This is the 7th time Venables will get a chance to basically get a crack at the Yellow Jackets. And to me, Pro, he has found them out and figured them out.
This week.
No, I was about to say those 2 defensive tackles, they just have devastating penetration early on. And if you can penetrate against an option offense, they have no time to set up any type of operation. The other key is Clemson has gotten more aggressive and more talented offensively. They get a 2-score lead, 14-0, 10-0 against Georgia Tech. About half your business is already done,
right?
Because now you got them playing the option and playing catch up. And it's very difficult to win playing catch up, playing that option game.
It's funny. We were talking about the appetite of college football fans at Vanderbilt. Where's the appetite for Georgia Tech? Johnson in his 11th year, and he's kind of seesawed between 9-10 wins and seasons that were under 500. He got the bowls in 12, 13, 14, and 16. Again, I'm not saying he's necessarily on the way out, but you wonder if there is a ceiling there that he has reached.
Well, the key point is, again, I think, the success he had at Georgia Southern and at Navy, using that option, the only thing I could get to the fact is you could use the excuse that maybe you're not recruiting the best athletes offensively that you could, especially out on the perimeter.
I'll say it's hard to do that at a school like that. It's hard to recruit receivers who were basically being told to block.
But then again, Georgia Tech at one time, just a few years ago, had the 2 highest paid wide receivers in the National Football League.
That's true.
So it's something to be said for a receiver who comes into the league who can block, but they don't get many opportunities if that option is clicking.
Here's a chat with the sheriff in Atlanta.
This week will be a tremendous challenge. this might be as talented a team as we've played since I've been here. Defensively, they've got multiple first-round draft picks, and offensively, they got a great deal of skill. I think their running backs and receivers are as good as anybody in the country. So, be a huge challenge.
Talking about their skills, they have a freshman quarterback who was highly recruited. Have you had a chance to look at him, and what kind of challenges does he present to the defense?
Yeah, I mean, he plays some. He's a very accurate thrower. He's probably not as much of a dual threat as Kelly is, but he's a really good player, very accurate, and throws a really nice ball.
Taquan said yesterday that it's probably the best defensive line you'll ever see in college football. Would you agree with that statement, and what challenges do they present?
Well, they're pretty good. I mean, they've probably got 3, maybe 4 first-round draft picks up there on the defensive line. So there won't be many teams that will ever have that. The challenge becomes just trying to find a way to block them or read them to get to the second level. But hopefully with the nature of what we do, we won't have to block all those guys, and maybe we'll be able to double some of them.
Idea of what you might be able to have successful?
You always got a chance. I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible. But they're a really good team. We'll have to play better than we've played to this point. And, if you do that and you execute, you've got a chance. I think the nature of what we do gives you a little bit of a chance, as opposed to have to line up in I formation and block all those guys, or, pass block. They haven't given up very much. And like the Texas A&M game, when you watch, one was busted coverage and one was a deflection off another guy in the end zone that a guy in the end zone caught. And really the other touchdown they had probably should have been an interception. It went through the guy from Clemson's hands. So they haven't given up a whole lot.
Last year, you guys, there seemed to be plays. It's one block here, one block there, and you move the ball actually pretty well at times against them, considering kind of what's going on. Does that give you some sort of idea of what you might be able to have successful?
You always got a chance. I mean, you're not going to beat a team as good as Clemson if you go out there and turn the ball over. And when you get a chance to make plays, we got to make them. Up there a year ago, we played really poorly in the first half again. The conditions were rough. And, I think the first series we fumbled the ball. And that's the stuff you can't do. I mean, we just got to execute our stuff. We got a system. You turn on the tape, and the kids can watch it. They turn on the tape. They understand. They know. We can see when we turn it on why it's not working and why it is, So we just got to do better. I mean, we had 2 or 3 shots the other day that could have been home run plays, touchdowns, and we missed them. If you make 2 of those 5, it's a whole different game.
That is Paul Johnson. That guy's all surface area, by the way. There's nothing deep about that guy. There's nothing. Having spoken to him in person, there's nothing deep about that guy. He's all surface area. Their schedule remaining after Clemson is not a pretty one. A home Bowling Green, which is the pretty part, but then you go at Louisville, home Duke, you're getting Duke off a bye, then their bye, at Virginia Tech, at North Carolina should be a win, home Miami, home Virginia, and at Georgia. That's a that's for a school that started out 1-2.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an appetizing way to go through the schedule.
Still, maybe they can scratch out a bowl if they can get that option working.
We will continue the chatter about Josiah James' decision to go to Tennessee over Clemson with David Shelton, who will join us next on Sports Talk.
These guys, they never sleep. Check them out on the web at SportsTalkSC.com. Now, more of Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. You know, it's. I always worry about a guy who goes to a school where the band only knows one song. Like, you know, guys who go to Oklahoma, the only song the band knows is Boomer Sooner. And, you know, Tennessee, the band, the only song that they know is Rocky Top. So, I mean, you know, I always worry about that. But, you know, you never know. There was obviously a lot more reasons why Josiah James chose Tennessee over Clemson. To try and break that down, we get a special treat, an extra chance to chat with David Shelton of the High School Sports Report, Charleston Post and Courier. You know, David, I think we all were expecting to see an orange hat, but it looked like a Clemson hat that had spent too much time in the washer dryer there, and it said Vols on it instead of a tiger paw.
Yeah, a little lighter shade of orange, and I can tell you from being in the room, there were a lot of shocked people. Some disappointed, but you know, really, most of the people just wanted him to be happy where he's going. But they were shocked at his decision. So, including some of those Clemson website people who traveled a long ways thinking they were going to get a big story and they didn't get one.
Oh, we saw them. We saw them in the Periscope feeds of people. We saw a couple of our friends over there from some of the Clemson sites that stopped filming once they saw that shade of orange. Were you shocked?
I wasn't totally shocked, only because I spoke to a college coach on Monday, and he indicated to me that he thought it was 50-50 with Tennessee and Clemson.
Really?
That he felt he just. And he knew some people that knew some people that knew some people, but either way, I think most of the people were shocked. I was surprised. I just, based on the conversation I had Monday, I just wasn't totally stunned. But as it got closer and seeing everybody in the room, and you just kind of said, well, you know, he's going to go to Clemson, and you know, I've been reading some message boards, and Clemson people are. Actually, they're just losing their mind over this, and it's really kind of comical to some of the things they said. You know how fans are. You know, they cheated and they bought the family off. But I can tell you this: Tennessee was the leader with him for a long time. He kind of indicated that. You know, someone had to beat Tennessee to get him. Now, he had a great visit at Clemson this weekend. He admitted that. He said Clemson did everything right. He was very complimentary, Brad Bunnell and the assistants. But somebody had to beat Tennessee. They, you know, if it came down to even, Tennessee was going to get it. Rick Barnes was the first guy to offer this kid in the summer of his 8th grade year. Barnes had not been at Tennessee very long. So somebody had to beat Tennessee. And he had a great visit when he went. He was very impressed with the players, that he said the whole team was very accepting. He didn't say negative. He did not say one negative thing about Clemson. It's just that it came down to the end, and he felt just a little bit better about Tennessee.
Yeah, it's weird. You said that Clemson did everything right. Clemson fans are worried that they didn't do anything wrong because they're accusing Tennessee of doing something wrong, or I would say nefarious, not wrong necessarily. I'm kidding.
Yeah, and it just didn't really. I mean, anybody that I live down here. I've been covering this kid since he was in 8th grade. I know his family very well. His mother's a basketball official in college, just retired. They're a basketball family. They made the decision based on education and basketball. That kind of stuff just didn't happen.
Right.
You don't have to give anything to Josiah James to get him to come to your school. He's high character. You know, it's a shame that people get upset about it. I mean, I guess, you know, you put your heart and your soul into your program, and you know, Brad Bunnell's obviously disappointed because he, you know, now I will say this, with Zion Williamson, a lot of people were saying Clemson. I never thought that. I never once did I feel like he was going to go to Clemson. But I did feel like Josiah was leaning that way after his visit, other than what the coach told me. He said 50-50. And I said, what about Duke? I mean, even the athletic director today told me, as of yesterday, he thought Josiah was going to Duke. So, I mean, he kept it very, very personal and didn't talk to a lot of people. So, you know, and he'll be a very good player. He may be a one and done, or at least maybe two and done, but because he needs to gain some weight and some muscle. But as a player, he'll have an NBA career, I'm sure.
And of course, some people will say it's Tennessee's revenge because Clemson and South Carolina, mostly Clemson, has been sneaking in the state of Tennessee and taking football players out of there. So I guess Rick Barnes said we'll get our revenge by stealing some of the basketball players. But when you look at it, recruiting, and obviously a lot of the kids here in state, and I know I'm talking apples and oranges here, they're glad to get an in-state offer in football. Guys look at South Carolina or Clemson. Hey, no matter who's the winning team at certain points, they're just glad to have an in-state offer. It seems to be in vogue now. If you play round ball in the state of South Carolina, I have to join my brethren and go out of state. You have a feeling why this is occurring all of a sudden?
And I don't have a great feel because I asked the Portergale coach that same question. I said, what are the in-state schools, Clemson, South Carolina, what are they doing wrong? And he said he can only speak to Josiah's situation. He thought Clemson and South Carolina, Frank Martin, were very good in the recruiting process, but they're not. But John Pearson's not making that call. Josiah James is the one making that call, and Josiah. I mean, again, I asked him. I said, "What is it saying when kids are going out of state?" And he said, "That's personal preference, but it was nothing negative. It was just that Tennessee was the leader for him, a quiet leader. He didn't say a whole lot of stuff to all the recruiting places over the last year. Somebody had to beat Tennessee in that, whatever that process is, the in-home or the visit to campus and, all that stuff that goes into it. And Clemson came close. They came a little short. And I mean, it's kind of the story of this would have been the biggest prospect Brownell ever signed.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, this would have been a huge lift. But it didn't happen. And you go back to the drawing board and, the 4 best players in the state are leaving the state. And there is something going on, but I don't know what it is. And nobody seems to have a finger on it, but you definitely got some work to do.
I have 2 hypotheses. We're talking with David Shelton, High School Sports Report, Charleston Post and Courier. Is it a simple there are enough people who have poisoned the well or are negatively slandering is a strong word, but negatively slandering, at least inside the state, both of these programs? Or is it just a simple, these 2 coaches have not gotten in early enough with these kids, and like you get a situation where Rick Barnes is there when he is in 7th and 8th grade, and he gives him his first offer and he sticks with him?
Yeah, I think the second hypothesis is probably closer to what's going on. I think maybe they're getting in on them a little late, but I tell you, Josiah said it a couple of times in a couple different ways. His relationship really was strong with Rick Barnes. And we should not be shocked by this. I mean, this is the same guy that got Kevin Durant to go to Texas. I mean,
Point that Pro made earlier in the show, yes.
Yeah, he's a recruiter. He knows the game, and he knows how to recruit kids. So this shouldn't be like a total shocker. I mean, when he was at Clemson, Clemson loved him because he could recruit and he could coach. He made guys like Greg Buckner superstars. But so it shouldn't come as a huge shock. If he'd have went to Tennessee with Bruce Pearl as the coach, I would have been way shocked. But Rick Barnes has a track record with these kind of kids.
Valiant work, David, as always. We'll talk to you Friday when we're talking more high school football on that scene, but appreciate your work on this.
Okay, man. Take care.
That's David Shelton. I mean, it's plausible. It's plausible that they're just not getting in early enough, which is fine. But then my implorement is now, okay, you got to start getting them, how early do you go? 6th, 7th grade? I mean,
these guys
seems excessive to me.
Both of these guys are successful coaches, and you have to do it the way you do it. If it's not, you didn't come on me late. Alabama just walked Juwan Gary. They didn't even get a bit. They didn't come in state to visit him, and he went to Alabama. So, hey.
Back to the gridiron. M&M boys, Corey Miller, Will Merritt will go over Clemson, South Carolina's games this week in conference here on Sports Talk.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
Hour 2 of Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network as we roll on here on a Wednesday, along with Professor Tom Hayes, yours truly, Will Pelagic. Phil Kornblut back with us tomorrow after his fast of Yom Kippur. We'll be at Newberry tomorrow for our Palmetto Pride Pigskin Preview Tour spot with the Wolves, who get ready for their sack opener with Carson Newman. 800-956-7266. We'll take a couple of phone calls as time merits, but as we roll on now, we speak to one Merritt and one Miller, because they are the M&M boys who join us on Sports Talk for their usual Wednesday visit. And we have them both with us, Will and Corey. Will, it's been a while, man. How are you?
Well, I got me a new soup can and some fresh string, so I'm good to go. I'm ready to go. Sorry about the phone snafu last week, but I'm really glad to be back with you this week, and a lot to talk about this week, that's for sure.
And Corey Miller joining us. Corey doesn't need a phone; he could just scream at us, and it would be put up on our microphones here, just because he's so loud and boisterous in his own right.
All right, what's up, guys? Good to hear your voice. Good to hear my friend Will. I was worried about him about the phone situation, but glad you're back. And yeah, man, another week of football, right? This thing is flying by. We wait so long, and then boy, it goes by so fast.
So I will start with Will. Just from your standpoint, Mr. Merritt, where Clemson sits through 3 games going into another option offense with Georgia Tech, do you feel like – are you feeling a lot of the angst that some of the Clemson people are feeling about this team for the first 3 games? Because to me, it seems like the angst is unwarranted.
I think it's very unwarranted. I mean, I think that you've had – you really only have one true test that scared you. I mean, I told you guys I thought that Clemson was going to beat Texas A&M by 2 touchdowns, and for the majority of the game, it was a 2-touchdown lead. Now, there was a fourth quarter collapse that I don't think anybody saw coming, but you didn't play an A game. You went on the road in front of 104,000, and you came away with a win. I mean, that's if you want to grade, a poor performance, do it off of a winning film. The other 2 games, I don't know what you really take from them. Furman and Georgia Southern are both really good programs, but they're not going to have the talent level, and you won handedly both games. And this weekend, I got to be honest with you guys, I don't see a huge obstacle for Clemson this weekend. I know that Georgia Tech runs a different type of option offense than Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern likes to hit you in the mouth, or Georgia Tech likes to cut block you and things of that nature. But, we've had a lot of success against Georgia Tech in the last few years, and I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about this team either. As I think they've proven over the last few years, they get better as the season goes on. I don't anticipate any different for Clemson this year. And, the only thing that I'm a little bit anxious about, I guess, is trying to find your identity in certain areas, especially on offense. But once again, the more games you play, the more opportunities you have to find that identity.
Yeah, Will, when you talk about identity, and it seems like Dabo is really interesting in bringing forward this 2-quarterback system. In your experience as an offensive lineman, whether it be injury or just a quick quarterback change to see what's going on, as far as listening to different voices and cadence, is there an adjustment that has to be made from the offensive line when you have a change for the guy behind the center?
Not a tremendous change, no, sir. I mean, you practice with these guys all week. They have a similar cadence. They have a similar routine, a different voice, calling it out, especially in an environment where really the quarterback, all he's doing is giving you a signal. You're going off the center's head. You're going off the center snap. And so you're really not listening to a whole lot. And the offensive line kind of takes control of itself as far as making their calls. And, when I played, I had a 2-quarterback system with Brandon Streeter and Woody Dantzler, and then with Woody Dantzler and Willie Simmons. So I went through some of that stuff as a player, and really the only difference is that one quarterback might have a different strength than the other one. You might be running downfield, blocking later in a play for a running quarterback rather than a quarterback that's going to sit in the pocket. You're going to pass block longer. I mean, so there are some nuances of the game that changes, but for the most part, you know what you got to do as an O-lineman. You know what you got to do on a play. You got your yard to mow. You mow your own grass, and you don't worry about who's taking the snaps.
Gamecock's not worried about two quarterbacks, but they'll be worried about the fact that it'll be 2 weeks since they last played. Pastor of Payne, your pulse on where the Gamecocks sit going into Vandy.
You know, it's going to be very interesting to see how they come out the blocks after being off last week due to Hurricane Florence. And of course, again, I thought some prayers with all the folks on the coast and in the PD area that's going through some tough streams. But yeah, you know, I think, you know, I look at it 2 ways. One, it could be good that they can really now sit back and evaluate themselves after 2 weeks of football and fix some holes that they had in the game against Georgia, work on some fundamentals. I feel like they need to work on defensively, like tackling and angles and just lining up right, knowing what you're doing, because they made a lot of mental mistakes. Offensive line, I feel like they might need an extra week of physicality in the run game, because they only ran 4 yards, I believe, against Georgia. So heading out on the road, first SEC road test of the season. I mean, Vanderbilt's a good team. Went to Notre Dame, almost came away with the win. I mean, this is a team that feels confident, and they're going to play well. You know, so I think South Carolina, knowing well Muschamp, and I was just over there yesterday and talking to coaches, which I do every Tuesday, spending some time with some of the players. They seem to have an idea that they're ready to rock and roll. They want to erase, and as a player, you want to erase a bad loss. You know, that thing don't sit well with you. So you like to play that next week, but they've been sitting on that awful loss for 2 weeks. And I think right now that hunger and thirst that they have inside, I think they're going to play well. It's going to be tough, but I think they'll squeeze a win there in Nashville.
You know, everybody's been talking, I guess, Corey, they want to see the explosive offense. But part of me, and that has to do with the calendar and age and that sort of thing, I'm sort of getting the old-fashioned mood as well. You get 4 healthy running backs. Obviously, you're going to use 2 most of the time. The best defense against a Vandy is to see Mr. Shermer standing on the sideline next to his coach. So do you think South Carolina will still try the quick strike, get the points on the board, or is this a game when you're on the road, you want to get that running game cranked up and just play keep away as long as you can from that Vandy offense and that seasoned quarterback?
Absolutely. One thing that I always believe, that when you go on the road, 2 things you pack: the running game. Number 2, you better pack stopping the run. You got to control the line of scrimmage. You got to be dominating in the trenches. And I think, you know, from just a standpoint, from a mentality standpoint, they got to establish the line of scrimmage, meaning, you know, come out and hit people in the mouth, run the ball downhill, 3-4 yards, a cloud of dust, and establish that type of mentality in this ball game. Because, I mean, the coach for Vanderbilt said, Derek Mason, hey, they're expecting a dogfight. It's going to be a dogfight. I think they need to run the ball. They need to establish an identity. Right now, I don't think anybody knows what this offense, what's their identity, who they are, what they want to be. So if you go down the road throwing the ball around 3 and outs and getting your defense down, Kyle Shermer is an excellent quarterback. Now you're talking about losing the football game. I totally agree with you. You got to be able to run the football. Matter of fact, my sports tonight, I'm talking about that. Run the football. Establish the line of scrimmage. When you got 4 guys that played a lot of snaps at the offensive line, that should not be a tough chore.
M&M Boys here on Sports Talk. Corey Miller, Will Merritt here. In our final minute of this segment, Will, I'll ask you this from the South Carolina perspective. Their next 4 games: at Vandy, at Kentucky, home Missouri, home Texas A&M. Would you say it's more likely that they come out of this over 500 or under 500 or at 500 with those 4?
That's hilarious. That's the exact question that I was asked last night on another show. I think it's a tough stretch for South Carolina. I think it's a tough weekend for them, because I think what Corey just said about them sitting at home for so long, they're going to have to knock the dust off again. It's going to be like another opener, if you will, or like after an open day. I think it's a tough stretch. I think that South Carolina is going to be very fortunate to be 2-2 after the next 4 games. Very fortunate.
We will keep you guys here for a little bit longer to get your kind of opposing viewpoints. It's always more fun when we hear Corey and Will speak about the opposition as far as that goes, and get the varying perspectives there. Again, it is also an SC Wild night, so bottom of this hour, we're going to talk to Captain Billy Downer about things involving the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources. More to come on Sports Talk when we continue here on South Carolina Radio Network.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
I just saw something that we have to talk about off air, or something. I saw something off air that we have to talk about on air when we're done with Corey and Will, because that it has nothing to do with South Carolina or Clemson. It does have something to do with sports, but it is a tad peculiar to me. Back with more from the M&M boys, Corey Miller, Will Merritt. We had the first battleship thrown across the bow, and of course, as you know, on here when we get these two together, we always allow opportunity for return fire. So I will allow the pastor of Payne to give his return fire. Will Merritt says that South Carolina is lucky to get out of this next 4-game stretch at 2-2 with those 4. Corey, what say you about this 4-game stretch for the Gamecocks of South Carolina?
It's going to be tough. I mean, I like to have something to argue with here, but it's going to be tough. And from the sample size that I've seen from 2 games, and looking at Vanderbilt, looking at how really good Kentucky is, and beating Florida, they played physically. Mark Stoops got a better football team there. That's on the road. We saw at A&M how they played Clemson, so I think they should have won that football game. So, and Missouri with that high-powered offense, maybe the best quarterback in the country, something. So it's going to be tough. If it's good, 3-1 will be great for South Carolina if they can get that done, but it's going to be difficult. I don't know. I think I'll know more after this game. I want to see how they play against Vanderbilt, if they fix some things. I think they can beat 3-1. I think they can beat Kentucky. I think they can beat Vanderbilt. I think they can beat Missouri, but I think Texas A&M is going to be a tough one.
I say this as a card-carrying life member of the University of Missouri Alumni Association. I've seen Sieves defend a bag of flour better than Missouri defends college football teams. So, my
hey, they can swing it, baby. They got an offense. They can swing that thing.
They can't play no defense, though. I'm just saying.
But I mean, you got to think South Carolina. I mean, over the next few weeks, they're going to see. I mean, they're going to see Drew Lock, obviously a quarterback. They're going to see Kellen Mond, what Clemson saw firsthand at Texas A&M. They're going to see some great quarterbacks over the next few weeks. I mean, you're going to see an inspired Kentucky team who beat Florida for the first time. I mean, you're talking about a couple of undefeated teams that they're about to face. Now, granted, that could all change over this weekend, but I think Kentucky and Missouri and definitely Texas A&M, they're all playing inspired football. And if I think the Marshall game, by not playing that for South Carolina, I think it kind of hurt South Carolina, because I think they could have gone out there and worked some kinks out against an inferior opponent. And by not playing them and having that game not have some film to work off of there, that's a big deal. And so I think South Carolina still has a lot of answers that they've got to present to people about some questions that are still lingering out there.
Corey, are there any trouble spots you think for Clemson with just the continued jockeying at quarterback, the secondary questions, and just, again, some of the angst I talked about with Will? Do you think that angst is warranted, Corey?
I think so. I do, because I think, you're starting to see a little bit, and based on, most people are much better than I do, but I do know folks tied to that program that Kelly Bryant don't like what's going on. And I've been upfront and saying Kelly Bryant should be sharing snaps with Trevor Lawrence. Yes, Trevor Lawrence is an outstanding talent, going to be an excellent quarterback based on what we've seen, but they should not be a 2-quarterback system football team. Kelly Bryant has done everything to earn the job. He took Clemson to the Sugar Bowl last year, won an ACC championship. I know in today's world, everybody's got to try to please these highly touted 5 stars who haven't done a thing yet. I see it everywhere. But my thing is, you got to be careful with that. And I thought had they continued to play Trevor Lawrence in the A&M game, they would have lost. So, I think Dabo needs to dial that back. And I think they got some things in the back end of the defense that need to work on the secondary. I mean, Montes, 330 in the second half. Get front 7 is outstanding. And I think right now the offense, and Dabo took the entire offensive line out the ball game, is not clicking. And that's why I think from a national perspective, people start to put Clemson back. I mean, right now, when I'm on my top 5, I got them like 5 or 6, because they haven't really been dominating at all. The Clemson team, we know what the front 4 can do defensively, but when you look at the rest of their team, and I'm just talking about what we've seen for 3 weeks, it hasn't been great to me. The defense, everybody says, oh yeah, the defensive line. That's what they're going off of right now. They're running off defensive line. but nobody talks about the entire body of work of this football team. And fortunately for Clemson, they don't have to worry because Georgia Tech is trash. Everybody in the ACC, in my opinion, besides Clemson, is trash. And so they can coach through this year and get by with it. But the same thing I see happening. If they get to the playoffs and they don't have a stumble up, they're going to face teams that got great defenses and great offenses that they're not going to be able to play on the same field with them. And that's my concern for the Clemson Tigers because it's going to be so easy for the regular season.
Will Merritt, I feel like you have a rebuttal.
Well, I mean, Corey acts like that we've stubbed our toe every time we've made it to the college football playoff. I mean, my gosh, we've played for 2 national championships. We won one of them, beat his precious Alabama Crimson Tide. We split with him. I mean, it's not like that we've gone into these games and look at what we've done against ranked opponents. I mean, good gosh, you're talking about when we've played top 10 teams, top 15 teams year in and year out. We have beaten them. We continue to beat them. So I don't want to hear that garbage. That's just a stupid argument. What I will say, though, is I will say that I do tend to agree with the fact that the 2-quarterback system, I think you had to go play both quarterbacks in that Texas A&M game to see what was going to happen. I think the preseason told you Kelly Bryant was going to be a great quarterback. I went on this show and told you guys. I talked to everybody there that Kelly Bryant had done nothing to lose that starting job, but yet that Trevor Lawrence had earned the right to get some playing time. Game film tells you that Kelly Bryant is the stud. He's the one that needs to be out there. I mean, this is a young man that's completing 70% of his passes and rushing for almost 5 yards a carry. I mean, there's nothing wrong with his performance. So I agree with Corey. I think Kelly Bryant needs to take 90% of the snaps. But I also believe that when you do get comfortable leads, you need to play your second and third team guys because you never know. Last week, Kelly got nicked up. You never know when that injury is going to happen. And you want that backup guy being ready. And you don't want the only opportunity that he's seen live bullets to be in mop-up duty. Put him in there when it's a 7-point lead. Put him in there on the road against an SEC team. Put him in there against Georgia Tech in the first quarter. Do those things to get him battle-tested so that if the inevitable might happen and you have a running quarterback take a shot on a shoulder or a knee or a hip, that you got somebody prepared. But I agree. Kelly Bryant is doing nothing but earning immense amount of favor amongst the Clemson staff, the fan base, and across the country.
Time is short, road is long. We'll get a final word from both of you. First, Corey, your best guess on what we see from both teams this weekend.
Well, I think South Carolina's very hungry and thirsty. I know they're well coached. I know they're well prepared. I know the type of coach Will Muschamp and his staff is. They'll be ready to rock and roll. I think they win this ball game. It'll be close until the fourth quarter, but I think Jake Bentley makes enough plays, enough throws. They'll win by 10. And listen, and I'm not even going to predict anything to Clemson until South Carolina. Really? I mean, come on. It's like going to play Spring Valley. And that's what I'm saying. I mean, come on, really? They ain't even have it. Georgia Tech is terrible. They lost to South Florida. I mean, so, yeah, they're going to cut. They're going to run the option. Paul Johnson, whatever. Clemson's going to win by 30. It's going to be boring. It's a snoozer this season. I feel bad for the Clemson fans that y'all got to watch JV football. I mean, because it is absolutely horrendous. Clemson rolls.
Will, he's left you about a minute. Your last word.
Well, you're right. We have had to watch JV football every November when we play South Carolina. So we've had to watch that for quite a few years. So when y'all decide to play varsity football, let me know.
Wow.
I tend to agree with Corey, though. I think South Carolina wins the ball game. I think Clemson wins handedly. I think South Carolina, this better be their week that they wake up, and all of a sudden this up-tempo offense better be up-tempo, and that up-tempo better not be between the red zones. It better be into the end zone and scoring points, or it'll be another disappointing loss. I do agree with Corey, though. I think Clemson does roll in this ball game. If they don't win by 3 or 4 touchdowns, I'll be very, very surprised.
I don't know what to say about the JV, but I think both Will and Corey, you earned your varsity letters today, because that was a real great edition of the M&M Boys. Best wishes to both of you this week, and we look forward to talking to you next week.
Sounds good. Y'all have a good one, guys. See you.
Will. Yeah, Will was like a middle school water boy.
Oh, man.
Corey just got to get that last little thing in there.
But that's the difficult thing is I said that's why Dabo kept pushing during the off season. We play to a standard.
Best is the standard. Because
it's not going to be easy to keep those guys cranked up. Who do we got on the schedule this week? Wait. Okay. Come on, let's work.
Gordon's back tomorrow. SC Wild is next here on Sports Talk.
It's time to get wild with SC Wild. Everything hunting and fishing from the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources and your host, Phil Kornblut. SC Wild on Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. It is SC Wild for a Wednesday, the 19th of September. It's been a while since we've checked in with Captain Billy Downer from the South Carolina Department of Resources, and he is actually on location today in the country roads of West Virginia. Captain, what brings you to the Mountaineer State?
I'm actually not in the Mountaineer State, thanks to our lovely Miss Florence.
Oh.
I am back in South Carolina.
I am misinformed.
Yes. I have been working out of Columbia and the State Emergency Operations Center. So today's show, we're going to talk about Florence a little bit, the impact to our state from the standpoint of our rivers and streams, and then moving forward, how it's affecting our deer season in some areas of the state.
And like I said, I know I saw a lot of the folks at DNR on the press conferences with the governor, Henry McMaster, and all that stuff. What was your department's role in helping out with the relief effort, and also how we will assess the impact, at least on your department and on our wildlife?
Sure. So about 2 weeks ago, of course, when the governor declared a state of emergency, we had our officers, biologists, and technicians. I want to include the biologists and technicians because oftentimes people don't know when it comes to a lane reversal, like on 26 or up on 501, all these places where we do these, we were trying to split the state, basically the coastline, in 3 areas and try to evacuate the coast when there's a mandatory evacuation order. Our biologists and technicians step up as well, and they're standing or sitting at a variety of what they call traffic control points to make sure people don't get on the highway the wrong way so that folks can get out in an expeditious manner. So I want to thank our biologists and technicians for all they do, as also our officers are out there as well, deployed for that evacuation. So then we all stand by, wait on this hurricane to come, which, I heard lots of jokes about Hurricane Florence, to the left, to the left, to the right, to the right.
Mm-hmm.
All the things it did, it bounced around, it slowed down. Thankfully, it did decelerate before it hit North Carolina. Of course, we're happy it didn't hit South Carolina. However, the impact of Florence is being felt very real time now in our state because of the amount of rain that it dumped. It hit Wilmington, and then it started a slow 2-mile-an-hour crawl into our state and slowly across the northern part of our state, dumping lots of rain. In North Carolina, we know that there were several areas that received 30 or more inches of rain, so 30 inches or more of rain. And the unfortunate part, past the North Carolinians, it's, again, my heart goes out to them. We all know survivors of Hugo and other hurricanes. We see the devastation that hurricanes cause. We don't want to say, bless our luck, but then, bad luck to them. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, that rain's hitting river systems that dump into our state, and that's what we're seeing now. So as of yesterday, the PD River system, again, this river, the waters that dump into our state, the Lumber River, the PD system, your Waccamaw, all come from North Carolina. Mm-hmm. So all that water flowing downstream. So yesterday, the PD River crested at 50.2 feet in Sherrall. Sherrall saw some historic flooding yesterday. And now that wall of water is slowly making its way downstream. And so we're starting to see flooding in other areas. Everybody remembers the town of Nichols from Hurricane Matthew, the expanse of flooding that had flooded that entire little small town out. They're looking at seeing that same type of flooding, or possibly a little worse, this year again. So here you go, 3 years later, literally, bam, here's more water in our state in some areas. So a lot of people right now experiencing some flooding. The Waccamaw, it floods a lot, but it's not expected to crest until possibly Friday. Once that Waccamaw system crests, we know that from experience, this river will probably not begin to fall for up to 10 days or longer. Now, I worked Hurricane Floyd's aftermath back in 99 and worked for 2 weeks on that Waccamaw when water was up to the rooftops. So you're looking at tremendous flooding again in that area. And, when you think about that, here in the Midlands, we didn't see a whole lot of impact. We saw some rain. We saw a little wind. But, we were very lucky here. But other people in the state, again, they missed the winds, but now they're seeing the result of all that rain. And so all that rain is dumping into our river system, and it is flooding us out. So we've got officers right now stationed up, again, in the northeastern part of our state, up there in the Conway area, Nichols area, Dillon County, Chesterfield, all of that way, again. And even into Lee County, we saw some flooding on the Lynch's River system. So a lot of things going on. So we've had officers right now we've got about 45 officers out, along with SLED officers and probation, parole, and pardon services have been out together deploying these flooding areas for the last several days. So, you've got over 100 officers up there working to help with evacuation and rescue efforts. And just to give you some numbers, to date, these officers have performed 35 rescues and 97 evacuations.
Wow.
Now, that's not big numbers. When you think about every one of those evacuations is a person in the home.
Right.
That's somebody having to move out of their home because water's moving in. So these are significant. And again, today, a whole new wave of officers are deploying to relieve these guys who have been out for 8-9 days since the beginning, or as we prepared for the hurricane to come. So a lot of effort goes into this. State agencies across the state working together. I got to do a little shout out for Mark Mousick, Hope Mazzell, and Maria Cox. They are part of our land and water section here at DNR, and they have been a tremendous asset to our department, to our director, to the governor, as we've moved through the last week, just giving round-the-clock real-time data. Particularly now that we're looking at flooding, they can tell us, they made a phone call just 2 nights ago that, hey, you need to get somebody from Chester to Sherrall because the water was rising 1 foot an hour.
Wow.
So providing a lot of good information for us. But a couple things, Will, I do want to cover here because people seem to always forget this. If you're out in these flooded areas, you listeners, and you're out in these areas that are prone to flooding, if your house is in a low-lying area, it floods. It's flooded in the past, and the rain we had years ago over at PD, on the PD River system and the Waccamaw system. If you've experienced flooding there in the past, you need to be thinking about getting out of that area now. Of course, those warnings have gone out, but just want to remind you to folks, if you're in low-lying areas like that on the PD system and the Waccamaw system, specifically those two, you need to think about getting out of those low areas. The other thing, people continue to do this, and it blows my mind, but DOT has been out there putting barricades up. They've been closing roadways down from Sherrall East all the way over, through Dillon County, into Nichols, around Nichols, all the way over into Conway. Conway's been shut off and been flooded. And people will drive around these barricades, and they end up getting in a situation a lot of times where their vehicle stalls, and then they have to get rescued. And this is just avoidable, way too easy to avoid that. Do not pass a barricade. Stay out of those areas. Again, people go, well, the water's only 6 inches deep. I can make it through here. But a lot of times you can't see when a pothole may have washed out even worse, and vehicles get totally, they hit that pothole and they jump down to 3-4 foot of water, and now you're in trouble. So folks just need to stay out of the flood waters. Again, if you live in a low-lying area that's prone to flooding, the PD and Waccamaw drainage, probably need to think about getting out if you're not out already. And then another thing, once these communities flood, these waters come through, you got houses flooded, don't joyride in John boats. Too many people want to ride around and look at it. And the problem is a lot of times your wake, that wave behind your boat will cause even more damage to these houses that are already inundated with water. So just be thinking about others when you do that. I know a lot of people that get moved out of their homes, they want to go back and check their home. We understand that. Our officers are going to be out there along with SLED and Triple P. They're out there to provide security as well in these flooded homes. So they're out there 24 hours a day in many cases. So just a couple thoughts there as we move down the road of this flooding.
Yeah, we're certainly, again, our thoughts are with those who are affected by this terrible tragedy in the northeast part of our state. And we'll continue to talk about it more here on SC Wild, at least to give you an opportunity to tell people, Captain, about how folks can get in touch with DNR if they need help and relief in those areas, because, again, we don't want people trying to go into that dangerous water. We also have the deer season affected by that as well, and we will talk about that more when we come back here on SC Wild on Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network.
It's time to get wild with SC Wild. Everything hunting and fishing from the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources and your host, Phil Kornblut. SC Wild on Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Back again with Captain Billy Donner from the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources. Before we get into the deer season closures, Captain, I just want to, at least right off the bat, if folks have questions, concerns about their residents, if they've evacuated or need evacuation help, how can they get in touch with your department to do so?
Well, always focus on 911. Call your local 911 dispatch. That's going to be your fastest route to get help because that's kind of the first line of defense.
And of course, and we keep people informed with that. The water level in the areas here in the state has also, as we said before, impacted the deer season. Give us more on that.
Yes. So, of course, we've talked about this before. In the last few years, it seems like we've had heavy rainfall from the flood to then Matthew, just almost back-to-back years. Anytime the hurricanes come through, dump lots of rain, our river systems get flow over the banks. And anytime you do that, you're pushing wildlife into smaller areas, and that makes them a lot of times susceptible to being, again, their normal escape routes are deprived and they're confined to that small area of ground, and makes them very easily susceptible to being taken by hunters. So the good news is sportsmen in those areas generally have reached out and said, hey, we need to close the season. So due to the extreme high water level and widespread flooding following Hurricane Florence, our department has declared a temporary closure for hunting within the PD and Waccamaw River drainage systems. Again, this is within the PD and the Waccamaw River drainage systems on all game species except for alligator doves, teal, Canada geese, hogs, and coyotes. Pretty much we're talking about deer. Talking about deer and maybe some and coon hunting a little bit off of those areas, or WMAs that are open to coon hunting. But again, this is private and public land. So effective at 12:01 a.m. on Wednesday, September 19th. That was today. A 10-day closure of the hunting season. A 10-day closure of the hunting season for all game species, excluding alligator dove, teal, Canada geese, hogs, and coyotes, will be in effect. The current closure will continue until 11:59 on Friday, September 28th, 2018. So a 10-day closure from today, and that is in specifically the PD and Waccamaw River drainage. Now, if you'll bear with me, I'm going to go through those and kind of list those boundaries out. If folks miss that and they want to find it, go to dnr.sc.gov, dnr.sc.gov. It's on the homepage right there. You can click on it. It will show you those areas. You can actually click on a map. It will show you basically interactive area so you can look at where those closings are. So the Great PD and Little PD River Drainage, which is the big one. In Chesterfield County, the area east of US 62 from the North Carolina state line to the Darlington County state line. In Marlboro County, the area west of US Highway 1 from North Carolina state line to South Carolina Highway 9, then southeast on South Carolina Highway 9 to South Carolina Highway 38, which is Edward B. Cunningham Boulevard, then south on South Carolina Highway 38 to Highway 15401, and then south on South Carolina Highway 38 to the Dillon County line. In Dillon County, all areas southwest of South Carolina Highway 38 from Marlboro County line to the Marion County line. In Darlington County, beginning at the Chesterfield County line on US 52, then south to State Road 133, which is Church Street, Society Hill Road, to the junction of South Carolina Highway 34 in Darlington, then east on South Carolina Highway 34, which is Cashmore Ferry Road, to the intersection of State Road 173, which is Pocket Road, and then east on Pocket Road to the Florence County line. In Florence County, beginning at the Darlington County line on State Road 173, Pocket Road, east to North Williston Road, South Carolina Highway 327, then south on North Williston Road to US Highway 301, East Palmetto Street, then east on US Highway 301 to Paper Mill Road, then south on Paper Mill Road to Old River Road, State Road 57, then south on Old River Road to US Highway 378, including all of PD Station WMA, then south on South Carolina Highway 4151 to the Williamsburg County line. In Williamsburg County, beginning at the Florence County line on South Carolina Highway 4151 south to South Carolina Highway 261, then east on South Carolina Highway 261 to the Georgetown County line. In Georgetown County, again, beginning on South Carolina 261 and Williamsburg County line, east to Williams Hill Road, then east on Williams Hill Road to the intersection with Old PD Road, and then south and east along Old PD Road to Burton Road, then southeast on Burton Road to Carvers Bay Road, Carver's Bay Road to Old Petey Road, Old Petey Road to the intersection of US Highway 701. Then north on US 701 to the Horry County line. Additional closures in Georgetown County are included the Waccamaw drainage, because there's 2 river systems there. In Marion County, the entire county's closed. Marion County, the entire county's closed. In Horry County, all areas west of US Highway 701 from North Carolina State line to Georgetown County line. Waccamaw drainage. So Waccamaw drainage now in Horry County, west side boundary again at North Carolina State line, South Carolina 905, then down 905 to intersection with US 701. Then south on US 701 to Georgetown County line. East side boundary begins with North Carolina State line on US 17, then down 17 to the Georgetown County line. In Georgetown County, the west side boundary begins at the Horry County line on US 701, then south on US 17. In Georgetown, the east side boundary beginning at the Horry County line on US 17, then south on US 17 to US 701. Again, all of these boundaries basically follow the hill along the river. Now, so try not to close everybody's land. Marion County is just one of those counties right now that is so flooded, they had to close the entire county. And again, it's a temporary closure for 10 days, and we'll reevaluate and go from there. But we're trying to keep our wildlife species in mind when we do that.
Right, and of course, those I'm hoping that all those boundaries are listed somewhere on the DNR website for folks who need those.
Absolutely. DNR.sc.gov, go straight to the website. It's on the homepage. It talks about temporary deer season closure. Click on that. It'll give you all those boundaries. It'll actually show you a map opportunity there as well. You click on it, it shows you the actual boundaries on the map, so you can see by road where those boundaries are. But you'll see that it basically follows the hill along the edge of the river. Try not to take too much land out, but trying to take out all those areas that will be flooded, that deer would be put in harm's way, and it will be on islands and things, and be really susceptible to overhunting there.
So basically, this is more for the safety of the deer as well as the safety of the those who would be hunting them from that perspective, just because obviously there's risks involved for all involved there.
Sure, but mainly it'd be protecting deer from being over-harvested, because you will see deer piled up on little islands
right.
in big numbers, and that's just unfair to the animal. So again, and the idea of fair safety and ethics, we want to close those seasons when this kind of flooding occurs.
We got about a minute and a half left, Captain. You have some closing thoughts for folks who are trying to stay safe in the aftermath of these storms, and also as far as things go with folks who are trying to again get in touch with folks involving there.
Again, like you said, if anyone has an emergency in the flood areas, floodplains, again, always call 911 first. That's their main number. That's going to get help to the fastest. Our officers are there along with SLAD Triple P. Again, a lot of thanks to those officers that have been out there for 9 days now. We've got new officers coming in. Our leadership's been working very hard around the clock, from Director Taylor to Colonel Francis Down, along with SLED, Chief Keel, probation, parole, pardon, Highway Patrol. Everybody's been working very hard to keep the public safe. Main thing is the flooding continues there now. It's just you hear it on different news stations, but this is the truth. Turn around, don't drown. Do not go across a flooded road or pathway. Turn around, don't drown. It's serious business. Again, these barricades, don't go around them. Even if you think you can get around it and you think you know better, don't go around the barricade. They're there to save lives, and that life could be your own. So do not drive around a barricade. Please check out the flood areas. And after the flood waters are out there, please don't ride boats and don't ride. If you have to go in and check on your house, we understand that. But don't be doing riding around in this flooded area.
Appreciate the great yeoman work from the folks at the DNR and throughout the state agencies trying to keep people safe. We appreciate the work that you have done, Captain Billy, and we'll talk to you here in a couple weeks.
See you first of the month. Thanks.
That's Captain Billy Downer, again, South Carolina Department of Natural Resources. Again, dnr.sc.gov is the best way to get the information on those closures with the deer season, and also with where the floodwaters have been worst affected there. We're back tomorrow. Corn Blue back in the seat. Yours truly back in the seat. And Professor Tom Hayes back in the seat. We will talk to you from Newberry, part of the Palmetto Pride Pigskin Preview Tour, as we preview the Wolves and Carson Newman and their sack opener tomorrow on Sports Talk.